could be anywhere doing a lot of different things, but you chose to be here.
Some shows don't need a celebrity narrator to introduce the show, but this show does. In a world filled with endless opportunities, why would two men who have built 13 multi-million-dollar businesses altruistically invest 5 hours per day to teach you the best practice business systems and moves that you can use? Because they believe in you, and they have a lot of time on their hands. They started from the bottom, now they're here. It's the Thrivetime show starring the former U.S. Small Business Administration's Entrepreneur of the Year, Clay Clark, and the entrepreneur trapped inside an optometrist's body, Dr. Robert Zillner. 2 men, 8 kids, co-created by 2 different women, 13 multi-million-dollar businesses.
We started from the bottom, now we're here. We started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we're here. We started from the bottom, now we're here.
Started from the bottom, now we're at the top, teaching you the systems to get what we got. Colton Dixon's on the hooks, I break down the books. Z's bringing some wisdom and the good looks. As the father of 5, that's why I'm alive. So if you see my wife and kids, please tell them hi. It's the CNC up on your radio, and now 3, 2, 1, here we go.
We started from the bottom, now we're here. We started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we're here. We started from the bottom, now we're here.
Yes, 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 and yes. Thrive Nation, on today's show, it's a very special occasion because the man who wrote this book and many other books, The Rich Dad Guide to Investing, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Cash Flow Quadrant, the man who wrote these books, the man who teamed up with Donald J. Trump to write a book about why he wanted you to become rich. This man has decided to lower his standards yet again and to join us on the Thrivetime show. The man who changed my life, the best-selling author, I think the best-selling entrepreneur author of my lifetime. I think he sold over 70 million copies. Robert Kiyosaki, welcome onto the Thrivetime show. How are you, sir?
Clay, my honor to be on your show. And thank you for all you do. I hear the ripple effects from you are good ripple effects. You know what I mean? People rave about what they learned from you. So congratulations.
Well, thank you, brother. And Eric Trump told me to tell you hello. He's excited to see you in person here for our in-person workshop coming up March 6th and 7th. And so I wanted to talk to you, if we could go back to the very beginning. Rumor has it that the first copy of your book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, when you self-published it, was purchased by a man at a car wash. Could you share with us that story? Because people know you as this megawatt best-selling author, investor, but could you tell us how and or why you sold your first copy of your book at a car wash?
Well, it's kind of a long story, but I'll do the best I can. As you know, capitalism is not taught in our school system. So a lot of our academic intellectual types, not to get political, are more left-leaning or anti-capitalists. So when I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I submitted it to all the booksellers. And 5 of them actually said something like this on the rejection notice. When it comes to money, you don't know what you're talking about. And so I was kind of, Clay, you're an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur. And as they say in Stoic, the obstacle is the way. And so if you let these pinheads get in your way, you're in trouble. So I called one of my best friends up and I said, hey, you want a car wash? I want to sell my books. I had 1,000 copies, self-published. He says, we don't sell books in car washes. I said, God, what a great idea. I'd be the only book for sale in a car wash. And so the guy that picked it up was a orthopedic surgeon. And he read the book. He went, oh my God. But he was also with Amway. So he sent it upline it to Dallas. This was Austin to Dallas. And this guy, Bill Galvin, calls from Dallas with a little southern drawl. He goes, great book. I said, well, thank you. How many copies you got? I said, I got 1,000 minus 12. Because I had 12 in the car wash. He says, yeah, I bought them all. I said, I'll take the rest of them. I went, well, who are you? He says, my name is Bill Galvin. I'm a diamond for Amway. And that's how Rich Dad, Poor Dad got started, from a car wash to the network marketing industry, which Donald Trump and I both endorse because it's a source of capitalism. And the book took off from there. So without Amway, I'd be in trouble.
Do you know two friends?
Do you know two friends? Now, Robert, I got to ask you this real quick here. Your book was centered around this thing called the cash flow quadrant. And for anybody who hasn't researched this or hasn't Googled this or hasn't discovered this, it's the migration or the path of an entrepreneur where you start off as being an employee. That's step one. Then if you do that well, you get promoted to being self-employed. You own your own job. And then if you do that really well, you get to become a business owner, which is what Dr. Zellner is today. And then you get to become an investor. Could you walk us through the cash flow quadrant? And then Dr. Zellner has a follow-up question for you.
Well, it's ESBI. You can always tell an employee by their words. I'm not really religious, but in the Bible it says the word becomes flesh. So employees always say the same words. I want a safe, secure job with benefits. And an S, a small business person says, if you want it done right, do it by yourself. And then the B entrepreneur says, I'm looking for the best team. They want a team behind them. And the I is an investor, but it's an insider investor. And people say, well, inside investment's illegal. I said, no, it's just how close to the inside are you? So when I invest, I don't own any stocks or bonds or mutual funds because that's for outside investors. I want to be part of the deal. So my goal, you can see back here's my cash flow board game. My goal was to take 3 companies public on Toronto Stock Exchange, the New York Stock Exchange, and NASDAQ. So I got Toronto and New York Stock Exchange public, and I'm going to take my NASDAQ company public this summer.
Wow.
So the goals are different, if you know what I mean.
Now, Dr. Zellner, you grew up, you were washing dishes at Chiquita O'Brien's.
Yes, sir.
And then you built
$1.80 an hour.
$1.80 an hour. And, you built the largest auto auction in the state of Oklahoma. You basically took over a bank that wasn't doing so well, and you rebranded it as Bank Regent or Regent Bank. You built a super successful optometry clinic. I mean, you built a lot of companies. Sir, what question would you have for Robert Kiyosaki here about the whole cash flow process?
Well, Mr. K, I'm going to call him Special K because he's special. So tell me about your personal journey on writing. Tell me about, you've got this baby inside of you and you want to birth it. How did you go about it? And what was your secret sauce on getting the words out of your brain onto the paper? Because a lot of people out there are like, man, I got a great idea. I want to write a book, but where do I get started?
Well, it comes to, I was a U.S. Marine. I went to military school also. And the first word we're taught at the military academy is the word mission. And the Marines are taught the mission. And so we all have a mission is spiritual. So the irony of it is I flunked out of high school twice because I can't write.
Oh my God. Even better.
It's not that I couldn't write. The teacher did not like what I wrote. Does that make sense? Yeah. With censorship basically in schools. And one of the comments I made is, when am I going to study money at school? And her comment was, the love of money is the root of all evil.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So as an entrepreneur, you're always running up against somebody else's bias, should I say, which is a free country. They're entitled to their point of view. But she didn't want me expressing anything about money because the love of money was evil. I'm going, geez. So that's how it started. I said, look, now I have an adversary called the school system.
Now, Robert, I got to ask you this. The cash flow quadrant was obviously in your book. I mean, Rich Dad Guide to Investing. I've kind of desecrated this.
Thank you for reading it. I can't believe that you do it worse than I do. Well, I'm proud of you. Thank you.
Oh man, you should see that. I mean, every book that you've written, I highlight this. I've got Post-it notes. People are saying, "What did you do to that book?" But the cash flow quadrant is a big part of your curriculum and of your teaching. Tell us about the board game, because I don't think a lot of people know about the board game. I think people know about the book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think a lot of people don't know about the cash flow board game. Walk us through the board game.
That's a very good. Thank you for saying that. We have 4 basic intelligences: mental, emotional, spiritual, physical. Mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. So if you want to learn to play golf, you'd have to have a golf club, ironically. But what we do at school is to sit there and they just teach your brain, mental. And entrepreneurship, as you know, it requires mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. So the game incorporates all of that, your four intelligences. The middle part of the game is the rat race. And the rat race is where our schools send you to. Go to school, get a job, and live in the rat race. And the purpose of the game was to expand your context. You know, how big a world can you see onto the fast track? Like I said, you know, once I understood money, I said, I need to achieve better, bigger goals. So you got to learn to walk before you run. And that's why my goal was to take companies public. That's what entrepreneurs do. So I took my first company public on Toronto. It was a Chinese gold mine in China. And as soon as we struck gold, the Chinese said, thank you very much. So
Wow.
I don't eat Chinese food anymore. The second gold mine I took public was on New York Stock Exchange. And that gold mine was it's in Utah, pretty close to Provo. And the third mine I'm going to take public is a kind of environmental. I'm not an anti-environmentalist, but it's carbon credits. You know, we get paid to sell carbon credits. So that I want to list on NASDAQ. So it's just goals. So the purpose of the game was to take what you knew and expand possibility. That's all it was designed to do.
Now, Robert, I want to go back to my 18-year-old mind, and I want to share with you an unfortunate but true story. Dr. Robert Zellner was my wife's first boss. So the first full-time job my wife had, you know, my wife's 18 years old. We were dating. Dr. Robert Zellner runs the optometry clinic, and he's my wife's first boss. At the time, I had earrings in both ears. I dressed like a rapper, but I wasn't a rapper. And I was trying to build a disc jockey entertainment company, not knowing what I was doing.
What did she see in you? I still don't know.
I don't know. And I do know that it was a situation where I kept trying to pick your brain and you kept trying to avoid me in your lobby. And that was a real thing that happened. And so I remember Robert Kiyosaki, I finally tricked Dr. Zellner into letting me meet him for lunch. And during lunch, I said, and there's things that you might have not even remembered that you told me, but I said, Dr. Zellner, I said, hey, I'm not getting any customers. If you were me, what would you do? I asked, and you were saying, well, you should probably advertise. And I remember thinking, how can I afford that? And then you said, well, why don't you just get 2 or 3 jobs? And you told me about working at Chiquita O'Brien's. Anyway, long story short, I got a job at Applebee's, Target, and DirecTV. And that was that tough love mentorship that I needed. I needed to be told, hey, you're not a rapper. Stop dressing like one. Get 3 jobs. Show up on time. Write things down. Get serious. And it was almost like a military baptism by fire sort of thing. I needed that. Robert, what would you say to somebody who's watching this show that's under the age of 30 and they're just kind of drifting along? They want to achieve super success. Where are these young folks getting stuck? What advice would you have for an entrepreneur out there, plumber, doctor, dentist, somebody who's got a business, but it's just not growing, they're not gaining traction? What would you say to them, sir?
You need a Robert Zeller.
There you go. Mistakes of leadership. Yes.
Sure, Rich Dad Poor Dad is very similar. My poor dad was a PhD, you know, poor, helpless, and desperate. And my rich dad was my best friend's father. And both men kicked my butt. I mean, they were tough guys. They were good men, very, very straightforward, honest men. I'll tell you a quick story is I wanted to open a restaurant. So my rich dad said, okay, get a job running a bar. I said, why? He says, do as I tell you. So I got a job. I was still in the Marine Corps. I was stationed in Hawaii. I got a job running a bar. And I said, what the hell am I doing here? And he had me measure the pour counts. My rich dad was. I said, what do you mean? He says, your bartender is robbing you blind. I went, what? Your help's robbing you blind. And he says, you're so effing stupid. Your help's stealing everything from you because you're effing stupid. Wake up. I went, and so Robert Zeller, I mean, that's tough love. He says, you better figure out how they steal from you, otherwise you're not going to make it. And so that's the kind of lessons that are real life versus, you know, what's the stochastic average of this and all that stuff. I had to figure out how my friends were stealing from me.
Now, Dr. Z, what follow-up question would you have for Robert Kiyosaki, sir?
Well, I tell you what, what's next? What's next for you?
I'm taking on Marxism. This woke stuff has got to go.
It's got to go.
Really,
And
That's a cancer.
how does that look? How does taking on Marxism look to you? Because I
Well,
want
we
to in
fight
on that.
back.
I want in on that game.
We fight back with capitalism. That's why, you know, the Eric Trump and Don Jr. You look at those two young men. I hunt with them. I go over the world with them. They're the finest young men. They're like their dad. So like father, like son. So I was in Hawaii with Don and Eric Trump, and we go into this restaurant, and those boys go into the back of the restaurant and they shake hands with all the help. They did that everywhere I went. They're the classic young men. So like father, like son. And then you got Hunter Biden, who's a criminal like his father.
Yeah.
Do you know? So it's unless we stand up and say, enough of this, enough of this. You know, the whole military went woke. And they're, you know, talking about diversity and equity and all this stuff. So then we're all one unit. No, 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 no. Some of you are black, some of you are white. I go, I was a U.S. Marine, you know, we're all Marines.
Right.
And Marines stay together. That's what we have to teach our kids.
Now, Robert, I want to ask you this. You know, with your career, you actually decided at one point to sit down with Donald J. Trump, and you wrote a book called Why We Want You to Be Rich. That was the book. You also wrote a book called The Midas Touch. Both books are epic. They're life-changing. In my opinion, everybody should read them. Let's talk about that for a second, though, because we have a guy that just walked in our studio, and I promise when I edit this, you'll be able to see these mystery voices, but we have a guy in our office right now, Steve Currington, and he's a very successful mortgage banker. And Steve, I think if you wrote a book, it might be called Why Steve Wants to Become Rich. But Robert, you wrote a book about why you want other people to become rich. So tell us about that book. What inspired you to write that book?
Well, Donald and I met in green rooms. You know, we'd share these, we're doing these huge real estate investment things like a Javits Center. We traveled to Australia together, San Francisco. And I got to know the guy very, very well. And the man is a character. He is funny as hell. But he has got a big heart. And we started talking about the gap between the rich and the poor. And as you know, for Marxism or communism, the thing that sparks revolution is the gap between rich and poor. So that's when Donald and I said, well, what can we do to influence the world, to teach people to be capitalist versus poor people? You know, that the idea of go to school, get a job, and you look at unemployment right now is going to go through the roof with AI coming in. So we have a very serious problem. And then my generation, the boomer generation, we don't have enough to retire on. And the biggest problem I see that we all know about is a national debt of 36 trillion. We're adding $1 trillion every 100 days. The interest on our debt is greater than our national defense budget, and our military is teaching people about gender equality. Something is wrong in this country. So that's what we fight about. I fight against education, to be capitalists and entrepreneurs. Most important thing we can teach.
Robert, one of the things that you said on multiple interviews, multiple times, and every time you said it, I thought to myself, have I not been paying attention? Because it felt like new information to me the first time I heard it, which is probably the 50th time I'd heard it. You said acta non verba. And maybe the first time you said it, I was driving while I'm, listening to the podcast while driving. And maybe I was half paying attention, but I acta non verba. And then it was like almost like an angelic moment for me. And I acta non verba. And once I finally understood what it meant and what you were saying and how it could be used, I think it was life-changing for me and how I approach business. Could you explain acta non verba, what it means and how our listeners can apply it?
Clay, you gave me goosebumps, man. I'm glad it hit you as hard as it did. Acta non verba is the motto of the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point, New York. I had appointments to Naval Academy and Kings Point Merchant Marine Academy. And Merchant Marine Academy's motto was acta non verba. In other words, don't listen to what a person says. Watch what they do. So you can tell a person whether they're capitalist or communist by their actions. So here's Trump. He puts the wall up. Biden took the wall down. Do you know what I mean? Acta non verba. That man is a traitor. I mean, opening the wall up And then all this DEI stuff, I'm going, they're trying to kill our country by weakening our military. Our national debt, like I said, is more than what we spend on the military. And then we have all of these people we're putting up in, we're housing our immigrants in the best hotels. That's all Marxism. What are you doing, not what you're saying? So I just listen to that stuff, and I can tell a person's at by what they're doing, not get distracted by their words. That's the most, I watch what a person's actions are, not what they say.
Now, I'm going to tee this up for Dr. Zellner, but this was something big. Dr. Z, when you guys bought the Bank of Nowata, then you guys rebranded it as Bank Regent. I think you were the chairman of the board. Was that your official title?
No, I was on the board. I wasn't the chairman. Sean Copeland was the chairman.
Okay, so Sean Copeland was the chairman. And I remember I met, I went out to lunch with Sean Copeland at Cedar Ridge Country Club. And I was asking Sean, I said, Sean, and this was before he bought the bank, but he was at Grand Bank and was thinking about buying the bank with you. And I said, what should I do with my money? And he said, what do you mean? I said, with my disc jockey company, DJconnection.com, we're doing about 4,000 events a year. So we're spitting out about $150 to $175 of profit per event. There's 4,000 events. What should I do with the cash? And he said, well, I'd take a quarter of your wealth and buy gold and silver. And I'm going, what? At the time, it was $400 an ounce. We're talking 2005-ish. And well, now it's $2,700 an ounce. And I said, Sean, you own a bank. And he said, well, actually, I work at a bank. I don't own a bank. It's a bank that I work for. But I'm just telling you, you should take a quarter of your wealth, buy gold and silver, take a quarter of it and buy real estate from emotional people. And I said, emotional people? And he's a funny guy, but he was, like when people's clothes are burning in the lawn, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
The grass is overgrown. And he said, if you'll just do that, then you'll be fine. And I said, what should I do with the other half of my cash? He said, well, keep it on hand for your new business plan. And at the time I thought, I'm never going to have a new business idea because DJconnection.com at that time in my life had defined every waking hour of my life from age 15 to age 25. That's all I thought about was growing that company. And so I remember I told my young wife, we'd been married about 5 years. I said, I'm going to buy an ounce of gold. Basically every time that we have $400, I'm going to buy an ounce of gold, and we're just going to keep doing that with a quarter of our money. And so I think my wife thought I lost my mind. I thought I lost my mind, but it was that octa verba moment where I started doing it. I started buying the gold.
Yeah.
Now it's 2,700 an ounce. So I want to ask you, Z, this question. When you and Sean were talking about buying the bank, how did that conversation go? And when did you recognize it was octa non-verba time? It's not time to talk about buying a bank, but let's go buy a bank. When did that moment happen?
Well, I was speaking at a conference, and when you're done speaking at a conference, people come up to you and they give their business cards and they shake your hand, want to meet you. And so Sean came up to me and said, "Hey, where do you bank?" And I told him. He said, "Well, I'm a banker over at I think it was Grand Bank, as you said." He said, "Why don't you let me take you to lunch?" I said, "I'm not interested in switching banks unless I owned a part of it." And he looked at me, and we locked eyes, and we had that moment. And I said, "How about you and I get in the bank together? What do you think?" And he said, "Oh my, I signed up for more for this conference than I thought." Absolutely. Let's go find a bank and do this together.
And you did.
And we did. And we got other investors, and we had a model, and we did it, and now it's successful. But we bought it, then we had the big downturn of the 2008 downturn.
You timed it perfectly.
Oh, we timed it perfectly. Yes. We were out counting cows in pasture because
Well, I want to give this backdrop to Robert Kiyosaki, because Robert, you obviously, people know you as a man who's had massive success now, but when did you decide to be the gold buyer guy? Like, when did you decide to, not just think about it and study it and look into the collapse of the dollar? When did you decide, hey, you know what? I'm actually going to start buying gold. When did that happen for you, Robert?
Well, it first started with silver. This here is the last silver coin. It's a Kennedy $50, 1964. And so at 65, it was copper. And that was Gresham's law. Gresham's law says when bad money enters the system, good money goes into hiding. So I started saving silver. And then when I was in Vietnam, I was flying off a carrier. And my rich dad sent me a letter, says, hey, watch out. Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. So this here is this is the gunship I flew in Vietnam, the most feared weapon by the Viet Cong. We'd come rolling in. And so my co-pilot and I said, what does that mean, gold standard? I said, well, maybe we should go buy some gold. Because gold was like 35, was now at 50. So we're on this carrier off of China. We look at the map of Vietnam. We see this pick and shovel AU. I said, oh, it's a gold mine. So we fly behind. The trouble was behind enemy lines. The NVA had already run it over. The Marines aren't the brightest guys in the box. I said, well, if we get in there quick, we might be able to buy some gold at a discount. So like two idiots with a crew chief, we flew in behind enemy lines. We land next to this village. We disarm. We walk into the village, this bamboo. I can still see it like crystal clear. And we have our hands up. It says, we come as capitalists. We're not Marines. We're just here to buy gold. So we go into the village. They point us to the gold seller, a little woman. And it's a little bamboo shack. And I said, we're looking at these gold nuggets. This is 1972. And I looked at him, I looked at my co-pilot, looked at me, and do you realize, Clay, it was illegal to own gold for Americans at that time? Wow. We didn't know what gold was. So we stood there looking at each other like idiots. And then all of a sudden he was yelling and screaming. So we knew the NVA was coming south and we we're going to be POWs if we didn't get out of there. So I'm yelling at him and he's yelling at me. Our partnership dissolved. You stupid son of a bitch. I'll never. I still remember coming through the village and this duck got in my way. I drop kicked the duck and then pissed off the peasants out there and get to my helicopter. And the reason my crew chief was screaming, my helicopter was sinking. I parked it on a rice paddy. So Marines are not the brightest guys on earth. So my helicopter is sinking like this, back into the mud. And I got to watch out for that tail rotor. So I put my little crew chief in the driver's seat. And so the two pilots get behind by that tail rotor and we're holding it up. Wow. And the guy starts the engine and mud flew everywhere. So we're now covered in mud. But we got the thing out, we climbed in, we got back to the ship. My commanding officer says, where the hell have you guys been? We're just covered in mud. I said, don't ask.
Now, Robert,
that's when I became a gold bug. And I went to Hong Kong and I bought my first gold Krugerrand, $50. I still have it today. It's in storage in Switzerland.
Now, sir, I have a couple rapid fire questions for you about gold. Then I want to go to Steve Currington, the mortgage guru, so he can ask you a question here. On the gold thing, before we get into the deep dive in the gold thing, you had a lot of missions in that helicopter, in those helicopters. And one thing I try to do on this show, and I don't know that I do a good job, is I try to be at least self-aware or self-deprecating, because I know people look at the success of Dr. Zellner and they go, I could never do that. But I think it's important to talk about the dishwashing phase. I think it's important for people to know the jackassery that I went through. And if you're okay, sir, I'd like to keep this story private between you, me, and our listeners. I believe that you might have got yourself in some trouble while you were in the Marines. Are you willing to share about that a little bit there, sir? And if not, we can punt and move on to another question.
Talk about me?
Yes, sir.
I'm actually proud of it. I was court-martialed twice. And I'm an academy graduate. But the problem was, like most men, it's a woman who got me in trouble.
Always.
Always. So I was in Hawaii. Came back from Vietnam, got stationed in Hawaii, and we had shaved heads, and those are the days of the hippies. So we're having trouble with dates in Waikiki. So my friend and I said, let's offer helicopter rides to the cutest girls. And so we were flying women in our helicopter, drunk as skunks, having a great time, flying island to island.
Oh.
And when they caught us, when they shut me down, they opened up this is the Kaneohe Marine Corps Air Station. They opened the door of my helicopter. The first thing that fell out were beer cans. The second that fell out was me. Then they find women's underwear in the back and scuba gear. Now, you can't take scuba gear up in the air. So for some reason, I went to jail.
For some reason.
was the best thing that ever happened to me because I sat there, I had to look at myself. What the hell what was I trying to do? And so I got this guy, Captain Abrams, was the prosecutor. I go into court. I said, I said, I better start telling the truth. It's about time. So he said, you tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth. I said, yes, sir. He says, tell me. I told him everything. I told him stuff he didn't even know. At the end of it, Captain Abrams says, you're free. I said, what? I said, how much time am I going to do? He says, you're free. And he says, you're getting an honorable discharge. Clay, I almost broke down and cried. That's saying the truth shall set you free. I wasn't trying to hide it anymore. But it was the best lesson. It was kind of the reward for being such a bad boy was to understand the meaning of truth.
Wow.
And that changed my life. Like I never cheated on my wife. I don't do those things. I don't cheat on taxes. I don't cheat. Do you know what I mean? I'd rather just play by the rules now. But I needed to go have my ass almost put in jail.
Now, sir,
So I
what kind
woke
of,
up.
could you hold up that helicopter again? Could you tell us what's the make and model of the helicopter that you were flying while intoxicated?
This is a UH-1E, and it's very underpowered. But those are rocket pods and machine guns, and it was the most feared weapon by the Viet Cong.
That's called the
Because-
1E?
Yeah, I could fly right into their houses and shoot them.
Wow. Well, now, Steve, you've been sober for how long now, Steve?
2016.
Since 2016. And Steve, he has a wonderful mortgage company called stevecurrington.com. He's kind of known as the guy in Tulsa, Oklahoma that's always driving Lamborghinis and flying around in his plane from point A to point B. And so I thought since we're talking about sobriety and flying in aircraft, this would be a good segue for you, Steve. So what question would you have? I know Robert's books have changed your life. So
Yeah.
what question would you have for Robert Kiyosaki?
Well, I know you're big on buying gold, but what else do you buy? Do you buy S&P 500? Are you diversified in other stuff? What other things do you recommend that someone might buy if they're already buying gold? What are some other things you buy? Stock tips here, Robert.
I don't. I have stocks, but they're my company. My company I took public, so I don't buy other people's shares. I'm a selling shareholder, not a buying shareholder. That's the fast track out there. That's the purpose of the game, is to push your mind up there. So I don't do S&P 500 at all. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I like real estate because I'm using 100% debt financing. Because after 1971, when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, the US dollar became debt, or US treasuries. And my concern right now is the bond market is going to crash because the Chinese are dumping our bonds. But I buy real estate on 100% debt. So let's say I have a piece of real estate throwing off $25 a month. That's an infinite return because I have no money in it. Now, I've studied real estate for most of my life. My rich dad started me teaching real estate with playing Monopoly. 4 greenhouses, 1031 tax deferred exchange, red hotel. So if you go to Waikiki Beach today, you'll find the Hyatt Regency Hotel right on Waikiki Beach. That was my rich dad's hotel. And he was teaching me how to acquire real estate for nothing. So that's why you need a Dr. Zelf as a teacher.
Yeah.
You got to have good teachers.
Now, Dr. Z, I want to ask you this question here. The building you're in, for anybody who wants to Google it, they can type in Dr. Robert Zellner and Associates, and they can find your optometry clinic.
Mm-hmm.
You're located next to Oklahoma's most prominent mall. You have a beautiful location. They just renovated the mall with a Shields support center there.
It's amazing.
And you've owned that thing for years, but could you share with the listeners out there how you acquired the property? Because my understanding is you were told it's not for sale, or it's not easy to buy, and I think somebody out there needs to understand the maybe abbreviated version of what you went through to buy that property, which you still own today.
Yeah, it was a third of an acre, and the guy was going to build a Burger Time, went through a divorce, and had a contract on it, had a backup contract on it, and I wanted that property. And the real estate agent said, well, there's already 2 contracts in play. And I said, I don't care. I'm going to do a third one. So we did. And then the first one fell through. And then the second one was getting ready to fall through. It was going to be a Jiffy Lube, and they had to get everybody around there in the PUD to sign off on it in order to do automotive. And so I called the ex-wife down in Dallas, and I told her my story, and I said, here's my story. Here's who I am, and I'd like to give you $10,000 more and close in 30 days. She goes, okay, done, sold. So instead of renewing that contract that was ahead of me, because they could get all the signatures signed off on it, all the big corporations to sign off on it, I was able to get that piece of property. And I was just nice and, honest and nice. And of course, a little extra money didn't hurt, but yeah.
But Robert, Kiyosaki, sir, you have a quote that I love. I love this quote of yours. There's so many quotes I love, but this particular quote, I'm going to read it. I hope I don't mangle it. It says, "The size of your success is measured by the strength of your desire, the size of your dream, and how you handle disappointment along the way." If Dr. Zellner hadn't had a massive desire, if he hadn't pushed through adversity, if he hadn't broken all the rules and made an offer after 2 offers were already made, he would not have purchased that property. Could you walk the entrepreneur through the young entrepreneur out there, sir, through the mindset that you have, because Robert Kiyosaki, I mean, you've had massive success. You continue to have massive success. What's the mindset that you have when you encounter adversity of some kind?
Well, first of all, let's go back to the old cliche, you got to set goals, right? And a lot of people set very small goals. The reason there's a cash flow board game is I want to push the brain out to what's possible in my life. So I have different goals. That's how it starts. And one goal, as most entrepreneurs, is you want to own a jet. So I own a Lear 60. But the problem was, how do I get somebody else to pay for it? That's how I had
Every man's
adversity.
dream.
Yeah. So that, I don't know if you can see the back of my, there's a Ferrari on my deck behind the balloon. My Ferrari there is, how do I get somebody else to pay for it? So the way that I bought that Ferrari is I bought a mini storage first, and the mini storage cash flowed and it paid for the Ferrari. So until you challenge your brain and, and be careful who you listen to. And Dr. Zellner, I mean, really, I'm not serious. Thank you for being a coach, and same as with you, Clay. If we don't challenge what we think, not that it's right or wrong, but challenge what you think. So I'm not saying don't play the stock market. It just wasn't my game. Like I played rugby, I don't play soccer. Different games and different team members. So that's what it comes down to. It's just real life. And so I have the best team players going, best accountants, attorneys, real estate guys. I own Wagyu cattle. You know why I own Wagyu cattle is because I sell the semen, sperm flow.
Yeah.
I don't have to kill them.
What? That's why
there's so,
whole podcast.
And you got a tax break for it. You know what I mean? And there's so many ways you can make money out there.
Hey, if you sell enough, maybe you can buy a Lamborghini.
Right.
Get you a Lamborghini.
Real quick, Dr. Z, you are a man who decided to get involved in the horse.
Nice segue. No, I knew you were going to segue to that.
That's a passion of yours. You always wanted to have a horse. And now you have a horse that actually did well this year in some of these professional. Can you share with Robert Kiyosaki about your journey into the horse world? Because that was your vision, was to own horses and have somebody else pay for it.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. When I was a little boy, you had two or three channels, and the only thing we could watch was like Bonanza and some Western shows. And I thought, man, I was very poor, big fan. I thought, man, one of these days I want to own a horse ranch because that means you made it. And I just put that on my bucket list. And then eventually one day I thought, now it's time to get my horse ranch. And I thought, what kind of horses do I want? And I did exactly like you did, Special K. I said, I want the kind of horses that somebody else pays for. So I went and got thoroughbreds because, they race, they get purse money, and people gamble on it, and you could sell them. And so I just immersed myself into the thoroughbred industry, didn't know anything about it. Went to Kentucky, went to some breeding seminars, and talked a lot about semen. And anyway, the idea of trying to take two animals, make a better animal, was fascinating to me. So I've had some success, and it's been a fun journey, and I love it. I love horses, and I love my horse ranch, and so it's kind of fun whenever you put something as a young boy on your bucket list, and then the day comes where you finally have it, and then you get to enjoy it. That's
Now this is
that's
gonna
pretty special.
this is gonna sound like a series of passive aggressive compliments, but they're not. These are positive. These are not backhanded compliments. Dr. Z, let's just say you're not 25 years old. Robert Kiyosaki, let's just say you're not 25 years old. But so many people that I see, that I meet, they say, you know, my desire, my goal, my big vision is to vacation, which the word vacation means to retreat from. But the people that I have found who are the most successful, that are the most vibrant, that are the most alive, regardless of age, are people that seek a vocation, which means your calling. So if you look at vocation, the meaning of vocation in Latin is your calling. And I believe that both of you, Dr. Z and Robert Kiyosaki, you guys are very much alive, and you're exhilarated and probably more enthusiastic than the average 20-year-old because you have a calling that you're pursuing, something that gets you excited every morning. And I want to get your thoughts on this, Robert Kiyosaki, because you are doing some big things right now. You've got the cash flow board game going on, but you're really, really talking about the future of money on your podcast. I mean, you're not. So tell us about what kinds of topics you're talking about on your podcast now, because I'm seeing you now talk about the future of money. You're really staying on top of BRICS and their attempt to unseat the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. Tell us about what topics you're discussing on your podcast right now, sir.
Well, again, this 1964 was a Kennedy half dollar, was the last silver coin. And 65, you turn a coin over like this, it was copper. And then it got me curious. And I started studying money. And all throughout history, every time they aberrated the money, the empire came down. So that's a long way of saying it. One day this was in the 80s, I was in a seminar with Dr. Buckminster Fuller, created the geodesic dome and all that. And he asked me this question everybody asks a young man. He goes, what's your purpose? What do you want to do? And I said, I just want to get rich. And he says, that's a very shallow thing. And then Bucky Fuller said to me, he says, what does God want you to do? What does God want you to do? And I sat there going, God, I served my country 2 tours in Vietnam and all this. Well, and it came down to my natural interest in money. And I don't trust my government. You know, I went to Vietnam. I went, we're lied to out here. And I didn't trust them. And I trusted our money less. Like I said, that's when I flew this little baby here behind enemy lines to look for gold. But who would ever known that my purpose was to teach people about money? But it was a passion of mine because, as you know, every time they print money, the rich get richer, but the poor and middle class get poorer. So we're printing $1 trillion every 90 days now. So those who own real assets like Wagyu cattle, gold, silver, real estate, oil, we get richer. But what else goes up in price is food, like chicken and eggs. You can't afford eggs today. So every time you print fake money, which is what I saw back when I was 17 years old, when you print fake money, guys like us get richer, but my friends and family get poorer because no financial education in school.
Now, let's drill down into that for a second. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, the BRICS nations for 16, almost 17 years, they've been hoarding the earth's gold. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. These countries are not screwing around. They've been hoarding the earth's gold in preparation to do what? Well, Putin has announced a great expansion of the BRICS bloc. And now you have, I'm just giving a rough average here, but now you have the majority of the earth's assets are controlled by these nations that identify with the BRICS bloc. And these countries have a stated goal of introducing a gold-backed programmable currency. I don't think the average person knows that, and I don't think the average person knows that the United States enjoys an incredible privilege as the world's reserve currency since the Bretton Woods Agreement. I don't think people know that. I know that because of your teaching and others, but most people do not know that. So could you maybe articulate or explain, Robert Kiyosaki, for our listeners out there, why do our listeners need to know that Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, those countries are hoarding the earth's gold and attempting to introduce a new reserve currency?
Because I think it was J.P. Morgan or somebody that said, gold is money, the rest is credit or debt. And gold is the only money there is, according that's in his theory. So that's why I tell the story of flying behind enemy lines. It's Gresham's law. We know what real money from fake money. But my greatest concern here is this: if we don't make changes in what we teach ourselves and our kids, the poverty in America is going to go through the roof because we're now the biggest debtor nation in the world. And, like what they're teaching us now is DEI. What about teaching us money? And I don't think it's a mistake. That's my concern. It drives me on. It drives me on, drives me on, because I love my country. 2 tours in Vietnam. But why does the school system not teach us anything about the truth about money? So gold is money. I call it God's money. Gold and silver are God's money, and Bitcoin is people's money. The dollar is fake money. And the more fake money we produce, which we do every day now, the greater the poverty goes up. Inflation wipes out the middle class and poor, but guys like me get richer because I own gold mines.
Now,
Tragic.
Now, Robert, I want to tie this into your relationship with Eric Trump, because you are coming to our business conference here in March, and Eric Trump speaks so highly about you. I'm working with Eric on his new book, and so I was with him 2 Mondays ago, finalizing some language on the book. And Eric's putting out his first book here at an age where he'll probably be the same age his father was when his father put out The Art of the Deal. So his father Donald J. Trump put out The Art of the Deal at age 41, and Eric is putting together a book at a similar age. So it's really exciting to see him do that. And he speaks super highly of you. Now, Steve, we were at, Eric and I have done 25 events together.
Right.
And you were stage side at one of the events.
Mhm.
And I never know what Steve's going to say to people he just met. All I know, I think you told Eric, you said, "Hey, I'm the guy that drives the Lamborghini." Is that what you said to him?
I don't remember exactly what I said because I was kind of in shock, when you meet somebody like that obviously we all have a lot of respect for.
Yeah.
And, but Laura was the icon that night, I think.
Everyone wanted to see
married up.
Laura.
Yeah, he married up.
Okay, well, I got to ask you. So now that you have met Eric,
Yeah.
and Robert is very good friends with the Trump family, what question would you have for Robert Kiyosaki about working with the Trump family, hunting with the Trump family? What question would you have?
Well, I think the perception that a lot of us supporters of them have is that they're just super down to earth, normal guys, which is what I kind of got in my quick meeting with Eric that I have. Can you talk a little bit about that, about like your interactions with them and what, some people are just a little different when they're on their own, but I would imagine that they're pretty down to earth guys. Is that accurate?
Amen, brother. Hey, I go to this private island in Hawaii called Niihau. You have to have special permission. We
Yep.
fly in via helicopter. There's no toilets, no running water, nothing. And we go there to hunt. And you get to know people pretty closely
I
when you
bet.
got no toilets, nothing, and you're sleeping on the outside. We had to catch our own food. And those young men now, they're such the best young men. I think a story. We're driving to the airport, catch the helicopter on the island of Hawaii to Niihau. And Don Jr. and Eric were talking to their sister. She was dating some guy, I think the guy she married. And they were giving her recipes so she could cook for her future husband. I said, "Who in the world taught you guys recipes?" Our mother. And it goes back to the mother also. So
Yeah.
I said, our mother was a strong woman. So anyway, it does take a family. And I think that's what's really quite shocking is the number of single moms raising boys today. It's tragic.
Now, Dr. Z, you do a form of hunting. Some might call it faux hunting, where Robert Kiyosaki, Eric's told me that he actually has been hunting with Robert Kiyosaki on multiple occasions where they're out there for multiple days. They're in a situation where they're kind of removed from the accoutrements of modern life. They're sort of off the grid. Dr. Z, could you share with Robert Kiyosaki here about your approach to hunting? Because I think your approach to hunting is a little bit different.
Well, I'm more of a gentleman hunter, I guess you would say. High fence is kind of my friend, and they don't actually tie the animal to the tree, but it is kind of almost a guaranteed hunt. Wink, wink, if you know what I mean.
That's awesome.
And then we retire to the fire pit area where we have a a cigar and maybe a beverage of your choice.
Some lag of
Now, real quick, this one I'm doing, but this is a true story here. Dr. Z, I've listened to an unhealthy amount of Robert Kiyosaki's podcast, and I've spent an unhealthy amount of time with you. And you two guys are so similar. So when Robert comes to the event in Tulsa, I'm having we're organizing a dinner that night for a couple of the speakers. I'm going to make sure you two guys get to know each other because you are so similar in every checkbox, and you guys are both so excited about teaching success. So I want to go back to this idea of teaching success. There's somebody watching this show right now, and you are in a hypnotic rhythm. Somebody watching, I'm talking to you right now. You're in a hypnotic rhythm where you go to work, you go to church, you go home. I'll repeat. You go to work, you go to church, you go home. Again, you go to work, you go to church, you go home. You're 37. You go to work, you go to church, you go home. You're 52. You go, and there's somebody needs to just wake up. There's something that has to happen. I grew up without money, and Robert Kiyosaki, your book was, my boss, Jeremy Thorne, said, Clay, I'm a 19-year-old working at Faith Highway and Impact Productions. It's a call center. He says, you need to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I said, why? He said, because you're going 90 miles an hour in a circular motion. You're like a boat without a rudder. I see the energy you're putting into it. I'm a couple years older than you, and I really think you need to read this book. And just the discipline of knowing, okay, here's the path. I'm going to go from being an employee to self-employed, to being a business owner, to being an investor. That was so freeing for me. And then 2005, meeting with Sean Copeland and Dr. Z and a handful of guys who kept telling me, just save a set percentage of your income. Just save, and just that discipline of take 25% of my income, buy gold, 25% buy real estate from emotional people. That let me know there was a proven path. What do you say to somebody right now who's watching this, Robert Kiyosaki, and then for some reason they've been in that hypnotic rhythm, they've been drifting, which I think is more dangerous than going the wrong way because you don't know how bad it's getting. What do you say to somebody who needs that wake-up call, sir?
Well, you've got to seek teacher. Who are your teachers? Like Dr. Z, I would seek him out. And I sought my rich dad out. And it came from the story of the three wise men. I'm not very religious, but I had to go to Sunday school. And my Sunday school teacher said, why were the three wise men wise? And I said, because they were rich. And she goes, what? I'm 7 years old. They were rich. She goes, why do you say that? I said, one had gold, one had frankincense, and one had myrrh. That's why they were wise. She goes, that's not it. So I said, well, why were they wise? She says, they were seeking the best teacher. And that became a guiding lesson in my life that I've had numerous types of rich dads and rich women, but I want to seek the people who are actually doing it, not theorizing it. So I was in the MBA program. I was sound asleep. And this guy was telling me stuff he'd never done before. Do you know what I mean? How can you teach kids when you haven't done it before?
Yeah.
That's like when I went to Vietnam, I saw like this thing here before I was teaching at Camp Pendleton. And I wanted to know who was the best pilot, the best gunship pilot. His name was Captain Forrester. And so I was at Camp Pendleton, California. And I sought Captain Forrester out. I said, Captain Forrester, teach me. And he taught me stuff they don't teach you in flight school. How to stay alive, how to fight, how to gun, how to hit trees. And so you always want to seek the best teacher. And I still do the same thing today. I still seek the best teacher.
Now, Robert Kiyosaki, one thing I notice a lot, and Dr. Z, I'm sure you've seen it a lot. I meet people all the time that come into my life and they say, I've got 400,000 followers on Twitter. And I go, well, that's incredible. That's actually more than I have. That's incredible. Thank you. And they'll say, and so here's the thing. I don't actually have any money. And I hear that all the time. They go, I'm on TikTok. I got 1 million followers on TikTok. That happens. I mean, at every business conference I've done, and I have spoken at business conferences for now 20 years doing this. And when people will show up and they do it all the time, and it's becoming increasingly normal for somebody who's a beautiful looking man or woman, and they'll come to me and they'll say, I've got 170,000 followers on X. I'm kind of a big deal on Instagram. I don't have any actual customers. And they're constantly feeding the beast, making videos, making viral videos about how to get rich. And then the videos keep getting shorter because, the shorts get more views, right? So now they're doing like 14-second videos where they go, sit up, And they're adding music to it, and the videos are getting dumber and shorter, and they're getting more viral, and they're making less money, and they're spending more of their time making these videos. Robert Kiyosaki, what do you say about the world of charlatanism that we live in, where all these fake influencers who keep making increasingly shorter and dumber videos? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I think YouTube is a tremendous educational platform for good and bad. So you've got to really, again, choose your teachers wisely, as anything else. So the best lesson that sits in the back here, and I think you do it and Dr. Z does it. Once you learn something, if you really want to learn it, you got to teach it. Teaching is one of the highest gifts you can give yourself. But like when I meet people like you, Clay, I was at the gym yesterday, and these young guys come up to me and say, "Thank you, you changed my life." That's the biggest juice there is.
Yeah.
You know, when you get back what you've learned, you've actually earned it then. So I created the board game so that once you learn the game, then you can teach others. And that's how we change the world.
Now,
People is better than going to school.
I'm going to pull this up real quick so our listeners can see this. The website here, richdad.com, that's where you can purchase the board game. Sir, is there a better place you want to direct people to? Where's the best place to buy the cash flow board game? Where can we go there, sir?
Well, it's on the Rich Dad website, I don't do that. So my company does all that.
No problem. I'm
stuff.
going there right now. I'm making it easy. I'll put a link on the show notes, richdad.com. Z, I'm clicking on the store button here. I'm clicking. I'm pushing through carpal tunnel. I'm doing it. I'm clicking on the products button. I'm scrolling down. I'm pushing. I'm pushing. Now I'm gonna stay on. Now I encourage everybody out there. Currington, this is what I'm asking. I'm asking everybody out there that doesn't hate themselves to go right now to richdad.com. If you hate yourself, don't worry about it. But if you don't hate yourself, go to richdad.com and you'll scroll under products, buy a copy of the physical game there. That's call to action number 1. Call to action number 2, there's this incredible podcast on YouTube called The Rich Dad Radio Show. I listen to this show everywhere I go, and I find myself listening to things like Octanon Verba, and it takes me like 7 times to get that concept through my cranium. And there's a lot of shows that are not the Rich Dad show, so you want to go to the official Rich Dad channel. There's a lot of people that want to be the Rich Dad channel, but they're not. So you go up here to YouTube. You got to find, I'll put a link on the show notes as well. You need to subscribe. Now, again, see, this only applies to people that don't hate themselves. So 1, buy a copy of the book. 2, or the copy of the board game. 2, subscribe on YouTube. And then 3, as of right now, we have 38 tickets left for the in-person workshop coming up here March 6th and 7th. And the way it's going to go is we're going to do a 90-minute Q&A session with Robert Kiyosaki and a 90-minute session with Eric Trump. And so a lot of conferences, people talk at you. This will be different because it's the Q&A format. It's the Q&A format. So see, just to kind of
saying if I get a ticket and I show up,
yes,
I can ask Special K a question.
Any question that you want, and it's going to be a great environment. It'll be about 300 people here, so it's going to be very interactive. We have scholarship tickets available to make it affordable for everybody. So, see, just to demonstrate the power of the Q&A here, in the final 5 minutes, we have Robert Kiyosaki. I'm going to give you the opportunity, sir, to ask your final Q, and then he can provide an A. And then, Steve, you have a question as well. So, Robert Zellner, Dr. Zellner, what question would you have for Robert Kiyosaki?
I love board games growing up. What was your favorite board game growing up, Robert Kiyosaki?
Monopoly or greenhouses.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you a question. This is going deep. If you could own any color group on the board, think about this. Any color group on the board, which one gave you the best return? Let's see how much you know Monopoly.
Asking me?
Yes, he's asking you, sir.
The green ones.
Oh.
Okay, now you're 2 fellow board gamers. So somebody out there who's a big Monopoly fan, that resonated.
Here's the one that I did. With the math of the dice, the orange were always the best.
Really?
Is that right?
The orange were always the best. The houses were cheaper, you better return, and more likely for people to land on them. I'm just telling you, orange is where it's at.
What I'm going to do at this VIP dinner is I'm going to make sure there's a room sectioned off so you two can get into Monopoly and really have that debate.
Well, that's my secret sauce. I just gave away my secret sauce to the game. I'm going to be, I shouldn't have said that.
Now, Steve Currington, final question. What question would you have for Robert Kiyosaki, sir?
Are you still flying? Do you ever get up in the left seat of that Lear 60? Or
No. It's a
You
thing
ride the
called
back?
it's proficiency. You lose your touch really quickly.
Yep.
So it's best I let somebody who's flying every day. So I sit in the back.
Now, Robert Kiyosaki, I'm going to pull this up real quick because I want our listeners to see this again here. On Amazon, you wrote a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And most people know you because of that book. That book is an incredible book. I encourage everybody to buy a copy of that book. Also, you wrote the Rich Dad Guide to Investing. I mean, that thing is so hot. That book, I'm telling you, folks, if you haven't picked up that book, Rich Dad Guide to Investing, that book is great. The book you wrote with Donald J. Trump, Why We Want You to Become Rich. I don't know if people know about these books. I think some of our listeners do. Some of them don't. I'm telling you, if you're saying, hey, listen, it's January and you want to get a head start on next year's Christmas presents, pick up these books, get a copy of the board game. Robert Kiyosaki, I'm going to give you the final word, sir. Final 60 seconds. What say you, sir?
I like what Maria Montessori, she was a great educational entrepreneur. She says, what the hand does, the mind remembers. So in other words, you want to play golf, you better pick up a golf club. And the reason the board game is so powerful is you have to use all four intelligence: mental, emotional, spiritual, physical. That's how we learn the best. And then you go to real life.
Robert Kiyosaki, thank you so much, sir. I really
Yes.
do appreciate you investing your most important asset with us, which is your time. Thank you so much, sir. And we'll see you in Tulsa, Oklahoma very soon, sir.
My honor. I'm looking forward to, Clay. Thank you. Thank you,
Take care,
Doctor.
brother.
Take care. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Clay Clark is here somewhere. Where's my buddy Clay? Clay's the greatest. I met his goats today. I met his dogs. I met his chickens. I saw his compound. He's like the greatest guy.
I ran from his goats, his chickens, his dogs.
So this guy's like the greatest marketer you've ever seen, right? His entire life, Clay Clark, his entire life is marketing.
Okay, Aaron Antis, March 6th and 7th. March 6th and 7th, guess who's coming to Tulsa, Jerusalem?
Ooh, Santa Claus?
No, that's March. March 6th and 7th.
Oh.
You're going to be joined by Robert Kiyosaki.
Robert Kiyosaki.
Best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Probably the best-selling, or one of the best-selling business authors of all time. And he's going to be joined with Eric Trump. He'll be joined by Eric Trump. So we got Eric Trump and Robert Kiyosaki in the same place.
In the same place.
Aaron, why should everybody show up to hear Robert Kiyosaki?
Well, you got billions of dollars of business experience between those two, not to mention many, many, many millions of books have been sold. Many, many millionaires have been made from the books that have been sold by Robert Kiyosaki. I happen to be one of them. I learned from the man. He was the inspiration. That book was the inspiration for me to get the entrepreneurial spirit, as many other people.
Now, since you won't brag on yourself, I will. You've sold billions of dollars of houses, am I correct?
That is true.
And the book that kickstarted it all for you,
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the author, the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, the guy that kickstarted your career, he's going to be here.
He's going to be here. I'm pumped.
And now Eric Trump, people don't know this, but the Trump organization has thousands of employees. There's not 50 employees. The Trump organization, again, most people don't know this, but the Trump organization has thousands of employees. And while Donald J. Trump was the 45th president of these United States and soon to be the 47th president of these United States, he needed someone to run the companies for him. And so the man that runs the Trump organization for Donald J. Trump, as he was the 45th president of the United States and now the 47th president of the United States, is Eric Trump. And so Eric Trump is here to talk about time management, promoting from within, marketing, branding, quality control, sales systems, workflow design, workflow mapping, how to build. I mean, everything that you see, the Trump hotels, the Trump golf courses, all their products, the man who manages billions of dollars of real estate and thousands of employees is here to teach us how to do it.
You are talking about one of the greatest brands on the planet from a business standpoint.
Right.
I mean, who else has been able to create a brand like the Trump brand? I mean, look at it. And this is the man behind the business for the last pretty much since 2015. he's been the man behind it. So you're talking, we're into 9 going into 10 years of him running it, and we get to tap into that knowledge. That's going to be amazing.
Now, think about this for a second. Would you buy a ticket just to see Robert Kiyosaki and Eric Trump? Of course you would.
Of course you would.
But we're also going to be joined by Sean Baker. This is the best-selling author, the guy who invented the carnivore diet.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Sean Baker. He's been on Joe Rogan multiple times. He's going to be joining us. So you've got Robert Kiyosaki, the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Eric Trump, Sean Baker. The lineup continues to grow, and this is how we do our tickets here at the Thrivetime Show. If you want to get a VIP ticket, you can absolutely do it. It's $500 for a VIP ticket. We've always done it that way. Now, if you want to take a general admission ticket, it's $250 or whatever price you want to pay. And the reason why I do that, and the reason why we do that, is because we want to make our events affordable for everybody. I grew up without money. I totally understand what it's like to be in a tight spot. So if you want to attend, it's $250 or whatever price you want to pay. That's how I do it. And it's $500 for a VIP ticket. Now, we only have limited seating here. With the most people we've ever had in this building was for the Jim Brewer presentation. Jim Brewer came here, the legendary comedian Jim Brewer came to Tulsa, and we had 419 people that were here. 419 people.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, there's no more room. I felt kind of bad that a couple people had VIP seats in the men's restroom. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. But I thought, you know what? We should probably add on. So we're adding on what we call the upper deck, or the top shelf. So the seats are very close to the presenters, but we're actually building right now. We're adding on to the facility to make room to accommodate about another 30 attendees or more. So again, if you want to get tickets for this event, all you have to do is go to thrivetimeshow.com. Go to thrivetimeshow.com. When you go to thrivetimeshow.com, you'll go there, you'll request a ticket, boom. Or if you want to text me, if you want a little bit faster service, you say, I want you to call me right now. Just text my number. It's my cell phone number, my personal cell phone number. We'll keep that private between you, me, everybody. We'll keep that private. And anybody, don't share that with anybody except for everybody. That's my private cell phone number. It's 918-851-0102. 918-851-0102. I know we have a lot of Spanish-speaking people that attend these conferences, and to be bilingually sensitive, my cell phone number is 918-851-0102.
That is not actually bilingual. That's just saying Juan for a one. It's not the same thing.
I think you're attacking me. Now, let's talk about this. Now, what kind of stuff will you learn at the Thrivetime Show workshop? So, Aaron, you've been to many of these over the past 7-8 years. So let's talk about it. I'll tee up the thing, and then you tell me what you're going to learn here, okay?
Okay. Yeah.
You're going to learn marketing and branding. What are we going to learn about marketing and branding?
Oh, yeah. We're going to dive into, so many people say, I got to get my brand known out there, like the Trump brand, right? You want to get that brand out there. It's like, how do I actually make people know what my business is and make it a household name? You're going to learn some intricacies of how you can do that.
You're going to learn sales. So many people struggle to sell something. This just in, your business will go to hell if you can't sell. So we're going to teach you sales. We're going to teach you search engine optimization, how to come up top in the search engine results. We're going to teach you how to manage people. Aaron, you have managed, no exaggeration, hundreds of people throughout your career and thousands of contractors. And most people struggle with managing people. Why does everybody have to learn how to manage people?
Well, because first of all, you either have great people or you have people who suck. And so it can be a challenge, learning how to work with a large group of people and get everybody pulling in the same direction can be a challenge. But if you have the right systems, you have the right processes, and you're really good at selecting great ones, and we have a process we teach about how to find great people. When you start with the people who have a great attitude, they're teachable, they're driven, all of those things, then, you can get those people all pulling in the same direction.
So we're going to teach you branding, marketing, sales, search engine optimization. We're going to teach you accounting. We're going to teach you personal finance, how to manage your finance. We're going to teach you time management. How do you manage your time? How do you get more done during a typical day? How do you build an organization if you're not organized? How do you do organization? How do you build an org chart? Everything that you need to know to start and grow a business will be taught during this 2-day interactive business workshop. Now, let me tell you how the format is set up here. And again, folks, this is a 2-day interactive 15. Think about this, folks. It's 2 days. Each day it starts at 7 a.m. and it goes until 5 p.m. So from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., 2 days. It's a 2-day interactive workshop. The way we do it is we do a 30-minute teaching session, and then we break for 15 minutes for a question and answer session. So, Aaron, what kind of great stuff happens during that 15-minute question and answer session after every teaching session?
I actually think it's the best part about the workshops, because here's what happens. I've been to lots of these things over the years. I've paid many thousands of dollars to go to them. And you go in there and they talk in vague generalities, and they're constantly upselling you for something, trying to get you to buy this thing or that thing or this program or this membership. And you leave not getting your very specific questions answered about your business or your employees or what you're doing on your marketing. And what's awesome about this is we literally answer every single question that any person asks, and it's very specific to what your business is.
And what we do is we allow you as the attendee to write your questions on the whiteboard.
Yep.
And then we literally, as you mentioned, we answer every single question on the whiteboard. And then we take a 15-minute break to stretch and to make it entertaining when you're stretching. And this is a true story. When you get up and stretch, you'll be greeted by mariachis. There's going to probably be alpaca here, llamas, helicopter rides, a coffee bar, a snow cone. There's just...
You had a crocodile one time. That was pretty interesting.
You know, I should write that down and actually do that.
Sorry for that one guy that we lost.
The crocodile, we duct taped its face so that we duct taped.
No, it was a baby crocodile.
And it was duct tape.
Yeah, duct tape around the mouth so it didn't bite anybody. But it was really cool passing that thing around and petting it.
I should do that. We have a small petting zoo that will be assembled. It's going to be great. And then you're in the company of hundreds of entrepreneurs. So there's not a lot of people in America today. In fact, there's less than 10 million people today, according to U.S. Debt Clock, that identify as being self-employed. So if you have a country with 350 million people, that means you have less than 3% of our population that's even self-employed. Yeah. So you only have 3 out of every 100 people in America that are self-employed to begin with. And when Inc. magazine reports that 96% of businesses fail by default, you have a 1 out of 1,000 chance of succeeding in the game of business. But yet the average client that you and I work with, we can typically double this. And this is no hyperbole, no exaggeration. And I have thousands of testimonials to back this up. We have thousands of testimonials to back it up. But when you work with a home builder, when I work with a business owner, we can typically double the size of the company within 24 months.
Yeah.
Double. And you say double? Yeah, there's businesses that we have tripled. There's businesses we've grown 8x. There's so many examples you can see at thrivetimeshow.com. But again, this is the most interactive, best business workshop on the planet. This is objectively the highest rated and most reviewed business workshop on the planet. And then you add to that Robert Kiyosaki, the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You add to that Eric Trump, the man that runs the Trump Organization. You add to that Sean Baker. Now you might take, but Clay, is there more? I need more. Well, okay. Tom Wheelwright is the wealth strategist for Robert Kiyosaki. So people say, Robert Kiyosaki, who's his financial wealth advisor? Who's the guy who manages? Who's his wealth strategist? His wealth strategist, Tom Wheelwright, will be here. And you say, Clay, I'm not going to get a ticket unless you give me more. Okay, fine. We're going to serve you the same meal both days. True story. We cater in the food, and because I keep it simple, I literally bring in the same food both days for lunch. It's Ted Escondido's, an incredible Mexican restaurant. That's going to happen. And Jill Donovan, our good friend, who is the founder of Rustic Cuff. She started that company in her home, and now she sells millions of dollars of apparel and products. That's rusticcuff.com. And someone says, I want more. This is not enough.
Give me more.
Okay. I'm not going to mention their names right now because I'm working on it behind the scenes here. But we've got one guy who's given me a verbal to be here. And this is a guy who's one of the wealthiest people in Oklahoma, and nobody really knows who he is because he's built systems that are very utilitarian, that offer a lot of value. He's made a lot of money in the it's where you rent. It's short term. It's where you're renting storage spaces. He's a storage space guy. He owns the what do you call that? The rental,
storage space.
Storage units. This guy owns storage units. He owns railroad cars. He owns a lot of assets that make money on a daily basis, but they're not like customer facing. Most people don't know who owns the mini storage facility, or most people don't know who owns the warehouse that's passively making money. Most people don't know who owns the railroad cars, but this guy, he's given me a verbal that he will be here, and we just continue to add more and more success stories. So if you're out there today and you want to change your life, you want to give yourself an incredible gift, You want a life-changing experience. You want to learn how to start and grow a company. Go to thrivetimeshow.com. Go there right now. thrivetimeshow.com. Request a ticket for the 2-day interactive event. Again, the day here is March 6th and 7th. March 6th and 7th, we just got confirmation. Robert Kiyosaki, best-selling author, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he'll be here. Eric Trump, the man who leads the Trump organization. It's going to be a blasty blast. There's no upsells. Aaron, I could not be more excited about this event.
I think it is incredible. And there's somebody out there right now, you're watching and you're like, but I already signed up for this incredible other program called Smoke Your Way to Thin. I think that's going to change your life. I promise you, this will be 10 times better than that.
It's like I picked the wrong week to quit smoking.
Don't do the Smoke Your Way to Thin conference. That is, I've tried it. Don't do it.
Yeah, chain smoking is not a viable. I mean, it is life changing. It is life changing. If you become a chain smoker, it is life changing.
Not the best weight loss program, though.
Right. Really. So if you're looking to have life changing results in a way that won't cause you to have a stoma, get your tickets at thrivetimeshow.com. Again, that's Aaron Antis. I'm Clay Clark, and reminding you and inviting you to come out to the 2-day interactive Thrive Time Show workshop right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I promise you, it will be a life-changing experience. We can't wait to see you right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah, so my name's Kelsey Hershey, and my husband and I own Rockhaven Retrievers. We've been working with you guys for probably 8 or 9 months now, since last May, and it's been a great experience. So when we first started, leads was actually our biggest limiting factor. So we just, we were struggling to get some leads. We had great connections with people, but we were just hoping to grow a little more and a little faster than we were. So that was our biggest limiting factor. We've about doubled our leads. And so that is no longer our biggest limiting factor right now. So that's been great. Some of the things we worked on or fixed was we were already doing some advertising, so we increased our advertising. Our website was kind of a mess. I mean, it was beautiful, but it wasn't being found. So that was our biggest issue. So you guys helped make us more Google compliant. Our coach worked with us. That was amazing. Getting it where people can actually find us. So that has been really important. And then also getting really good, high quality Google reviews where people we're in an industry that very much relies on trust. And so having those referrals and Google reviews has been really important for us. It's had a huge impact. So just the stability and predictability that comes with a business coach, honestly, that was the biggest thing for me. I really I know every Friday morning at 5 a.m., we're going to meet with Andrew. We're going to go over our numbers. We're going to talk about our biggest limiting factor. That way we can just kind of chink away at that. And so we can grow systematically. It's not chaotic at all. And so having that and the way it impacts our family has been huge too, just because, we have, like I said, we're very much family oriented. We have 4 kids. And so it's really important to us that it doesn't become all about the business. And that is something I've really appreciated. Andrew actually cares about our marriage. He cares about our family and our kids, and keeping that all in line with what we have told him is our highest priorities has been really important. And honestly, if that wasn't the case, we probably would not be doing business coaching. So that's a very important part for us.
You can either learn experience and bashing your head against the wall, or you could talk to the guy that's already got the jackhammer on the other side of the wall. And in my experience, it's every dollar I spent on coaching has returned to me like 100,000, 10,000 times. And it's not just that. I got there so much faster. So people come in and they're calling in, they're already pre-sold. They're saying, oh, like I've watched all your videos, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's just a matter of picking out which bunkie they want, as opposed to prior to that, it might be more like, I'm skeptical, blah, there's, we've broken through that whole wall of skepticism because there's just so many people now singing our praises that aren't us. And it makes the sales job easier, it makes the marketing easier, it makes everything just so much more effective when we've got just, it's not just you got one testimonial, it's you got, I'm a feminist basket weaving artisan. Do you have a bunkie that works for me? And I go, well, here's a video of a feminist basket weaving artisan. raving about the bunkie. It just, they can relate to that on that level.
My saying is, if it's important to you, hire a coach. And I think that's one of the reasons people are not successful is they eat a cheeseburger instead of hiring a coach. You know what I mean? And so my coach pushes me. They're younger than me. They push harder. They're trained. And as my rich dad always said, amateurs don't have a coach, but professionals always have coaches. So I've always had coaches for whatever was important. My rich dad was one of those persons. I wanted to learn how to play Monopoly in real life. So he was my coach.
What made you decide that you wanted maybe a mentor or an ongoing business coach to help you grow bunkielife.com?
So for me, it was just that I ultimately wanted to grow. So my thoughts are, I mean, how much are you going to pay? It's either going to be the cost of trying to figure out in your own trial and error, or are you going to pay someone else who's been there and done that? And I'd rather just pay the been there, done that price as opposed to the trial and error price, which is a lot more expensive.
My saying is, if it's important to you, hire a coach. And I think that's one of the reasons people are not successful is they eat a cheeseburger instead of hiring a coach. You know what I mean? And so my coach pushes me. They're younger than me. They push harder. They're trained. And as my rich dad always said, amateurs don't have a coach, but professionals always have coaches. So I've always had coaches for whatever was important. My rich dad was one of those persons. I wanted to learn how to play Monopoly in real life. So he was my coach.
Whoa.